November 22nd, 1963. For millions of Americans, it began as an ordinary Friday. People went to work, children went to school, newspapers landed on front porches, businesses opened their doors. No one knew that before the day was over, the course of American history would change forever. The United States was in the middle of one of the most tense periods of the 20th century. The Cold War dominated global politics. Only a year earlier, the world had stood on the edge of nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union and the United States competed for influence across the globe. Fear, uncertainty, and political tension shaped everyday life. Yet despite these challenges, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy remained one of the most recognizable figures in the world. Young, charismatic, confident. To supporters, he represented a new generation of leadership. To critics, he represented controversy and political division. But whether people loved him or hated him, almost everyone agreed on one thing. John F. Kennedy was unlike any president America had seen before. On the morning of November 22nd, President Kennedy was visiting Texas as part of a political trip intended to strengthen support ahead of the next election. The visit included several cities. Crowds gathered everywhere he appeared. People lined streets hoping to catch a glimpse of the president. The atmosphere was optimistic. Photographs from that morning show smiling faces, waving hands, excitement. Nobody knew they were witnessing the final hours of a presidency. The presidential party arrived in Dallas shortly before noon. The city was prepared for a motorcade through downtown streets. Thousands of people gathered along the route. Many climbed onto sidewalks and curbs. Others watched from office windows. Families brought children. People carried cameras. It felt more like a celebration than a political event. The presidential limousine moved slowly through cheering crowds. President Kennedy sat beside First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy. Texas Governor John Connally and his wife occupied seats in front of them. Secret Service agents monitored the surroundings. Police officers secured the route. The motorcade progressed through downtown Dallas without incident. Then it approached a location that would become famous around the world, Dealey Plaza. At first glance, Dealey Plaza appeared ordinary. Roadways intersected near open green spaces. Office buildings surrounded the area. Railroad tracks crossed overhead. Nothing about it suggested it would soon become one of the most studied locations in modern history. As the presidential limousine entered the plaza, witnesses continued waving and cheering. Cameras recorded the moment. One of those cameras belonged to a clothing manufacturer named Abraham Zapruder. Standing on a concrete pedestal, Zapruder filmed the motorcade as it approached. His footage would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. At approximately 12:30 p.m., everything changed. Witnesses heard a loud crack. Some believed it was a firecracker. Others thought it was a motorcycle backfiring. Confusion spread across the plaza. Then another shot rang out, and another. The presidential limousine accelerated. People screamed. Some dropped to the ground. Others looked toward nearby buildings, searching for the source of the noise. Within seconds, what had been a celebration became a scene of panic. President Kennedy had been struck. Governor Connally had also been wounded. Secret Service agents reacted instantly. One agent climbed onto the rear of the limousine. The driver accelerated toward Parkland Memorial Hospital. The race to save the president had begun. Behind them, Dealey Plaza descended into chaos. Witnesses pointed in different directions. Some believed the shots came from a building. Others believed they came from a grassy area near a fence. People ran. Police officers rushed toward potential firing locations. Everyone seemed certain they had seen something, yet nobody agreed exactly what that something was. Those conflicting memories would become one of the defining features of the JFK investigation. At Parkland Hospital, doctors fought desperately to save the president. Medical personnel moved quickly. Every second mattered. The injuries were catastrophic. Doctors worked with urgency and determination. Yet despite their efforts, the outcome soon became unavoidable. Shortly after arriving at the hospital, John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead. He was 46 years old, the youngest elected president in American history. The news spread rapidly. Television networks interrupted programming, radio stations delivered emergency bulletins, telephone lines became overloaded. Across America, people stopped what they were doing. Many refused to believe the reports at first. Others cried openly. Some sat silently in shock. The assassination of a sitting president was almost unimaginable. For millions of Americans, the event felt unreal, as if history itself had suddenly broken apart. Back in Dallas, law enforcement launched one of the largest manhunts in modern American history. The search for the shooter began immediately. Investigators focused attention on the Texas School Book Depository, a building overlooking the motorcade route. Witnesses reported suspicious activity. Evidence began emerging. Police officers searched floor by floor. The pressure was enormous. The entire world wanted answers. Who had fired the shots? How many shooters were involved? Why had it happened? The questions came faster than investigators could answer them. Within hours, a suspect emerged. His name was Lee Harvey Oswald. At the time, few Americans had ever heard of him. That would soon change. Oswald's life contained details that immediately attracted attention. Former Marine, defector to the Soviet Union, political activist. A man with a complicated and often troubled personal history. To investigators, he appeared to be exactly the kind of suspect they were looking for. Yet from the beginning, the case contained uncertainties. Questions emerged almost immediately. Some witnesses described events differently. Some evidence seemed straightforward. Other evidence seemed confusing. The assassination investigation had barely begun, yet debate was already forming. What exactly had happened in Dealey Plaza? The answer would become one of the most contested questions in modern history. The assassination did more than take the life of a president. It transformed America. Trust changed. Politics changed. Public confidence changed. The event created a national wound that never fully healed. Many historians argue that the optimism associated with the early 1960s ended that day in Dallas. The country entered a new era, an era marked by suspicion, division, and uncertainty. Even today, decades later, people continue discussing the assassination. Books are written, documentaries are produced, evidence is re-examined, theories are debated. Very few events in modern history have generated so much attention for so long. Yet before the theories, before the investigations, before the commissions and controversies, there was simply a tragic afternoon in Dallas, a motorcade, a crowd, a series of gunshots, and a nation watching in disbelief. By the evening of November 22nd, America knew its president was dead, but it still did not understand why. Authorities believed they had identified a suspect, yet the man at the center of the investigation had his own story to tell, and according to him, he was innocent. In the next episode, we follow the life of Lee Harvey Oswald, from his troubled childhood to the Soviet Union to Dallas, and we examine how one of the most controversial figures in American history became the prime suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. This is Echoes of Humanity TV, youtube.com/@EchoesOfHumanityTV.